Welcome back to another episode of the Gifted Performance Podcast. If you haven't already, make sure to like the video and subscribe for future content. For more information about our one-on-one coaching and other training or nutrition options, visit giftedperformance.com. Our newest feature, the Gifted Express, offers premium programming for bodybuilders, powerlifters, Olympic weightlifters, and lifestyle clients for only $30 a month. Enjoy the video. We'll see you on the next one. And as always, stay gifted. Welcome back. Another episode of the GPP, Get to Performance Podcast, giving you knowledge and takeaways to improve your own general physical preparedness. If you are listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and all those things that I've never even heard of, you're missing out because I am rocking that Vegeta-approved Super Saiyan Blue hair, while the rest of my counterparts are just looking like normal, established, job-holding, high members of society.
I look like hell. I feel like everybody looking at me right now is like, that guy looks like hell.
That guy doesn't have a job. That guy is not a high member of society. Yes. And now you're really missing out because the antlers have come out. It is Rudolph, the red-cheeked fitness coach.
I've already slept on this part of my mustache so many times that this is just how it's going to grow the rest of the time.
If you keep growing it like that, are you going to have like the Italian twists on the end?
Except it's going to be mid mustache and not at the end.
Okay. I like how it grows in all white trash like that.
Yeah, it's nice, and I'm getting all this gray hair now. So
welcome. So some big news all around. Dom is a reindeer. Paul is a soon-to-be, fingers crossed, don't want to jinx it, homeowner in the great state of Florida. He's coming down where all great things happen.
That's right.
Well, I'm the only one not in Florida.
That's right. Yeah. Coming down to Ronnie World.
Not living in freedom.
It's snowing up in Michigan. How those first snowfalls been?
It actually sucked. My car spun out and I almost hit a tree.
Wow. Dom's like, I'm just lucky to be here on this podcast. I'm just really.
I swear to God, I spun out in the middle of the road. My advanced traction control was broken.
Not very advanced.
Did a whole 360 with my pregnant wife in the car.
Oh.
And almost hit a tree.
Were you wearing those antlers and you were holding on to them for dear life? You're like, not my antlers. Like,
no, but my car's fixed, so now
nice.
It's fine.
So
it's 50 degrees here today, though.
At Ford,
that's not bad.
Help this man out.
Yeah,
send him a brand new one. Actually, let's get this man a Bronco, a 4-wheel drive that'll never fail him.
Yeah, no, I'm mad at them, but it's okay.
We're gonna fight. All right, let's answer some questions today. Right, our first one comes from @Aboud_Al-Subi. I remember the first time he asked a question, I was like, I'm not even going to try. And look at me now, Dom. Are you proud or what?
You're very ethnic.
Very learned. Very cultured.
Why did you direct that question at Dom?
It's, because
he's
my brother. My brother. You will answer this question, brother. He asks, what are your tips on getting 5 meals in when you have a busy schedule? So I feel like we've answered this question, the inverse of this question, quite a bit. How to kind of reduce your calories in terms of a meal planning structure. But we haven't really answered this from like getting more calories in, fitting more meals in standpoint. So what are your kind of tips there? Someone's got a busy schedule. They have a high calorie intake and they need to get that in 5 meals, or they think they need to get that in 5 meals. What are some tips?
I think that's the first thing I would sort of address is like, if the person were here, like, why do you think you need 5 meals?
Because Coach wrote a meal plan with 5 meals.
I know, right?
I get people eating disorders.
No, but you may need 5 meals. Like if you have so much food that you're like, there's no way I'm getting this in 3 or 4. Then 5 meals might be a good idea. Or 5
because if it's, what is that? If let's say it's 6,000 calories. If it's 4 meals,
I'll pull up his stuff.
You're getting 1,500 calories per meal. So if you're getting 50 grams of protein in that meal, that's 200 of those calories. That means you got
which is just for myself and Spencer. It's just a little more than a snack.
So he's eating 3,566 calories. across 5 meals.
Oh,
So
this is
around
your client.
Yeah, so around 700
Yeah, that's why I
calories
said.
per
That's
meal.
why I was making a joke about the meal plan. 'Cause I'm an asshole.
Come on, keep
yeah, he does have
up.
a shitty ass
It all
coach.
adds up.
So it's around 700 calories per meal, aka an appetizer, if you split it with someone.
That's just
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
So, and I think he goes to school too and works. So I think
this
he
man's
has a very busy life.
Very busy. So one
The
tip
first
that I would
thing
say,
I would do. Wait. I
Okay.
would ask my coach to quit being a piece of shit. All right, and give me less meals. No, I'm kidding.
Yep. Good
Go
place
ahead.
to start. All right. So my first suggestion and the suggestion that I give my clients is don't limit the times at which you can eat. Some people come off a dieting phase and they're like big in that intermittent fasting. I'm going to wait until like 11 or noon to get my first meal in. You got to ditch that mentality. You got to throw that shit in the trash because it's massing season and there's no skinny champions where I'm from. So you got to start eating and you got to start eating early. I would wake up and go with some sort of like liquid meal, like a smoothie, like blend up some frozen fruit, oatmeal, peanut butter, protein powder, Greek yogurt. Get yourself a nice like 1,100 calorie start to the day and make sure it's liquid so it's not like a really voluminous, clunky, hard meal to get in.
So one thing I do, so when he was struggling, I told him wake up earlier and don't take as much time to eat meal one. Try to get come downstairs and hit meal one right away. And then
Immediately.
I do this with guys too, is when food's high, meal one is always less protein so that they stay hungrier for meal 2, 3, and then so on. So like meal one is a lot more carbs and fats. They take a lot of their supplements in the morning. So I like to have a good amount of fats in that meal. And then a high fat meal in the morning shows cognitive increases. So I like that to start off the day with lower protein so they can get into meal 2 and not have to be as full. And guys like it, but it comes off weird because it's like 2 whole eggs only. And they're like, where's all the rest of the protein? Kind of. But that's how I like to do meal 1 when food gets really high.
So wait, you don't even meet bare minimum for leucine threshold for breakfast?
I mean, if you're counting protein from everything else, yeah, it does. But
Okay.
yeah, it's like
I was about to,
like
I was
his-
about to fucking stress the fuck out here dude, for your client. It's like
his
what?
meal
You
1
asked
is
him to do
28.
what?
His meal 1 is 28 grams of protein, but the rest of his are almost 50.
Yeah. No, that's cool, man. Seal of approval. I'm okay with it. To me, it sounds like this is more of a time thing than a hunger thing. And I don't know, he may have hunger issues. So like my biggest thing is just planning around your day, right? And so I like to plan what I'm eating. For instance, I have a block of time, like my client updates, right? From like noon to 4 or 5, that 5-hour stretch, I'm super duper busy. So like I stick with the fastest, easiest meal I can do. Sometimes it's literally a peanut butter and jelly and a core power, right? And so I get a bunch of carbs, fats, and like, I don't even know, 50, 60 grams of protein. And I can slam that in like 5 minutes. And then the times of the day where I'm the least busy, that's where I sit down and have my bigger, more wholesome meals, right? And I think the thing Ryan said is huge because almost everyone I have ever coached that has a trouble getting their food in, they wait too late in the day to start their food. And so at the end of the day, they're like, dude, I have 1,500, 2,000 plus calories. And it's just so hard. I'm like, you just got to start earlier. As soon as you wake up, start. I don't care what you start with, a smoothie, a full meal, like you just got to start. And once you start, don't go 3 to 5, more than 5 hours without having something, right? Because you can't get what you can't get behind on. And I'm kind of the opposite of Dom. I like for people to get started on the protein early because that is the hardest macro to catch up on. Like if you're at the end of the day and you got 150 plus grams of protein, like that is hell. So I like for people to split the macros up fairly evenly in terms of their protein at least. And then, to just, try and hit checkpoints and make sure that, by the time it's 6 p.m., I'm not, or 5 in the afternoon or 4 in the afternoon, you're not just now hitting meal 2 and you have 50 out of 200 grams of protein done only,
Yeah, I like that. Start strong with protein kind of thing. Go ahead, Jay. Sorry.
Yeah, I think those are all. No, go ahead. Those are all good points. That's definitely. I think it does sound like it's an issue with just a time thing. I think we've probably all been in that. I remember that situation where I was in school full time and I had 2 jobs or 3 jobs. I might have had 1 or 17 kids at the time, but so time was real short. So a little bit of it was like you guys said, getting up early, and then I didn't have time to eat a full meal. So I would, do like Ryan said, and most of those meals in the morning were something liquid. So it might have been I think at the time I was real big on acai, which I don't know, whatever. It said superfood on the package, so it must be good for you. So I would have some of that and some whey and then some Greek yogurt. It was just a bunch of berries and a bunch of shit that I could just basically get into my car and I would just drink it on the way to campus. And then a lot of that scheduling stuff is going to be sort of finding those pockets of time when you can eat. Because there's sometimes where if you have a job where you get 1 lunch break, so it means you have breakfast, probably in the car or right before you leave to go to work, and then you have lunch, and that's pretty much it. And then you have dinner for a lot of people. So if you're in a situation where you can't sit down and eat an entire meal, that's where liquid meals, basically, it's almost like what you're stuck with, or that's where, supplementation for diet starts to sort of become more important because that's what it's meant for. It's meant to supplement your diet. So things we're all big fan, or at least I am big fan of Core Powers because that's real quick and easy. You can drink it. It's got a lot of the stuff you need. But yeah, just quick things probably is the thing to do. And then also sort of pick the times in which you can eat more foods. I usually have a pretty large dinner, but that's because that's the time where I can sit down and have the most amount of my food. So
yeah. I before Core Powers, when I was in school, I would always out the door just grab
before Core Power.
I know.
Do you guys remember when Core Powers didn't exist?
Yeah, I would grab a shaker, fill it with water or milk, and then throw a scoop of whey in a Ziploc bag and peanut butter and jelly in a Ziploc bag, and just slam it between walking to classes or whatever. But protein bars are good, and I've even had some people where I tell them those Gatorade protein bars are super tasty. They taste like candy bars, and they're 300 and something calories. And I'm just leave one by your bed. If you happen to wake up in the middle of the night and you can't sleep or something, just slam it real quick. It might even help you go back to sleep. Do shit like that. Have protein bars on you.
That's so funny that you bring up those Gatorade bars because we were, for Thanksgiving, we were on this trip. And when I went out of town for business to Arizona, I basically bought a package of those and just kept them in my carry-on. I'm just eating these Gatorade because they're perfect. They're
so
not
good.
That great if you're looking for protein content because I think it's 12 grams of protein and it's 50 grams of everything else.
No, they're 20. They're 20. You got the wrong ones. Really? You didn't get the 20.
Really?
I remember
I've never seen those.
Post-show,
I ordered them on Amazon.
The NSCA.
It must be a Florida thing.
You know what it is? It's the NSCA. If you get your CSCS, they send you, which is shout outs to the NSCA, the best carry-on bag on the planet. It's a duffel bag that has a backpack shoulders.
Mine's right over there
somewhere.
It's right there.
Yeah, mine's right over here on the floor. And they send you a box of these Gatorade protein bars to get you hooked for life. It's a brilliant strategy.
It's hey, thanks for spending thousands of dollars on our certifications over the years. We really appreciate you. Here's some shitty protein bars, you piece of shit.
Just to elaborate too on a point that was already made, with really busy people, a lot of times they just get into their work and they don't even think about eating. So when you're not even hungry, and you're at risk to just look up and it's 3 PM and you've had one meal, that's where I think scheduling becomes so important. And through my
Set
day,
timers
I have
on
windows.
your phone.
Yeah, I have little windows where I eat as soon as I get up. So sometime between 8 and 9 a.m. And then I have a window from 11 to 1. So if it happens to become 1 o'clock and I haven't eaten yet, I stop what I do and I eat, right? Or it's 11. I'm I should go ahead and eat now. It's a good time, And then I have another window between like 3 and 6 that I eat, and that's going to be my pre-workout meal. And then I eat immediately post-workout. I only have about 4 meals a day. But
I think when your caloric intake is high and you're struggling with timing and such, this is where that whole sort of like if it fits your macros actually has some application. Because if you have I guess I'm one of those people where I have a pretty high, nutrient requirement or caloric requirement just to maintain weight. If I try to survive on like chicken and rice and broccoli for whatever 3,000 calories it takes for me not to lose weight, I'm going to be miserable. So I have to like eat things that are a little bit outside of what we consider to be quote unquote healthy. So I'll make sure I hit my micronutrients first. I'll make sure I get my fruits and veggies and all that stuff. But the rest of it's kind of like almost whatever I want to eat.
So I like that you brought that up. But sometimes when you give people that advice, they take it in the total wrong direction.
Yeah.
And one meal is literally like a Ben and Jerry's and an oven baked pizza. And I'm like, dude, that's not what I asked you to do.
It's 1,500 calories. I'm halfway there.
Yeah.
1,500 calories
and I'll give
30 grams of trace protein.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not a big off-season meal plan guy, but I did do one for one of my recent clients. And what we did was we just kept all the food the same. But when we reached that point where it was like, all right, like, look, every single meal has like 400 grams of rice, plus like a fruit or a veggie or something like that, along with the protein source or whatever. It was like, all right, our next meal addition is a Pop-Tart. And we just slid Pop-Tarts into meals. And that's what I sort of recommend for people to do when it gets to that point. Eat your normal food, but add a few Oreos on the back end, or something like that.
I like how you said that, Oreos on the back end.
What about so like Zach? I know he won't mind me using him as an example, but Zach is someone where like unless his calories are like over 4,100, he like really can't consistently gain weight. So we were kind of brainstorming like how he can get more calories in, and Zach, being a disgusting human being, was like, I can mix Gatorade powder, 2 scoops of orange Gatorade powder into water and a vanilla core power, and I can drink that during my workout. And I really like it. Like, is that a good way to get more food in?
It probably tastes like orange creamsicle.
I know a lot of guys that do that.
Yeah,
they drink protein shakes while training.
Well,
Yeah,
when I worked at Max Muscle many years ago, we would let people sample things, and we would mix orange juice with the vanilla whey, and it tasted like a creamsicle, orange creamsicle.
Yeah.
You got go ahead.
You got to think that your training window is like what, 60 to 90, maybe up to 120 minutes of your day. So like, if you're really struggling throughout your waking window to get your calories in, to completely ignore that 90 to 120 minute window in terms of getting calories in might really set you back by the end of the day. Like, even if it's just carbs, you don't want to do protein.
You got to think.
Travel to the gym, travel home, prep for the gym, getting home, taking a dump, in the shower.
It's like 4 hours of my day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it makes it a little bit easier when you end up going into a contest prep if you've used a strategy where all you're really doing is switching sources. So if you, let's say, like for off season, let's say I have a ham sandwich for lunch because it's more calorically dense than, say, turkey, and then I just switched to a turkey sandwich. Now I've decreased fat. So it's like there's certain things that your strategy you can use throughout the day so that if you do go into a deficit, you can make an easy switch. So it's like, off season, I might have beef with dinner, then I just switch to chicken. So it makes it easier if you think about stepping outside of those sort of, prototypical bodybuilder-esque foods and just switch to a more higher caloric or a calorie total for a specific food. And then you just make sort of a switch. So even it's like, full fat cheese. Now you switch to low fat cheese. So those are the things that you can do to kind of increase your calories throughout the day, is just kind of step outside of that box a little bit.
This is all fantastic advice. Now let's give them our worst advice. So my worst advice is that you're going to want to wake up and you're going to start your day with a full bloomin' onion from Outback Steakhouse. Just pound that to the dome. That's a nice 1,600 calories. Just
you wouldn't have to eat for the rest of the day.
Sip the little sauce that they deliver with it. And then just pray you make
I
it through the
think
next
that's
2 hours.
no, that's huge, man. I really
What's huge
like to
about eating a
discourage-
bloomin' onion for breakfast?
That sounds disgusting.
Sounds
actually.
That sounds amazing. As long as it's fresh. If it's fresh, it's solid. But yeah, like I don't like, for either in a dieting phase or a gaining phase, for people to put junk food on the early side of their day, because it ruins how good the cleaner foods are for the rest of the day, and you don't want any of it, you know?
And
Like
it
if you
makes
just
you
start your
hungry.
day with delicious IHOP, and you're just like, you look at your chicken and rice later and you're like, fuck this.
Yeah.
There's no way. And then it's a love-hate though with fast food and stuff, because it like makes you feel so full so fast, but I sort of feel like a couple hours later, I'm like, where did it go? It's all gone. I
I'm
need
the
more.
opposite. If I eat something like that, I'm full for hours.
Yeah. I am with like a big restaurant meal. But like, I don't know, Arby's, that shit just dissolves in your fucking body.
Paul,
I haven't had fast food in like years,
I
bro.
haven't,
Yeah, I
I
haven't
haven't had
had
an
Arby's
Arby's
in
in
a
like
while.
a decade. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the last fast food I had. Maybe Popeyes. Popeyes is just quality. Don't say anything bad.
I like
about
how
Popeyes.
as soon as I said that, Jason was like, Paul, like he was so concerned. He's like, you can't put that in your body.
I
Like,
generally
do
get,
that.
I get concerned about Paul all the time. Like sometimes in the middle of the day, I'm just like, fuck, what is Paul doing right now? I hope he's okay.
What's Paul's systolic blood pressure right now? Is
I'm
he
like
doing
a bad
okay?
dog.
All right, Abood. Hopefully we answered your question thoroughly enough, and good luck getting that food in. Remember, it's what coach puts for you on the meal plan is more of a suggestion than it is a requirement. And at the end of the day, do whatever
Oh,
you
it's
want.
a requirement, bro.
Howdy, Gifted Gang. We hope you're enjoying the episode so far. If you've been thinking about joining the Gifted Performance team but not sure one-on-one coaching is right for you, you should give the Gifted Express a try. The Gifted Express is our automated coaching feature that provides training guidance for bodybuilders, Olympic weightlifters, powerlifters, and lifestyle clients. For only $1 a day, you can get constantly varied, always progressed training. Sign up today by clicking the link in the show notes below. Now back to today's show. All right, our next question is a question that Dom and I answered on the live stream a while back, but I do want to revisit this one and get the opinion of the other guys here. This question is, do Adderall and Vyvanse affect muscle growth due to increased cortisol and stress levels? So Dom
Can I
had
jump in
some
on this one?
points on the live. If you want to reiterate those here, and then we'll see
I
if the
said
other guys
no.
here agree or disagree.
I said no because it's probably very acute and to the increase in cortisol. And then I forget what else I said. I said I know people who use Adderall who are very big individuals.
Hell
I don't
yeah.
think it affected anything.
Hell yeah. No.
This might be like an interesting This might be like an interesting like area to study, though, right? To look at, like, you know, have a control group that isn't using these things, and then have a group that has been using them for a while or just started using them, and put them through, you know, a 12-week resistance training study and see what effects it has on muscle growth and see what effects it has on kind of like metabolic health in general. Like, is it going to affect your resting blood sugar? Is it going to affect your HbA1c over 3 months, your blood pressure, all that kind of stuff?
So with this question, I think that a lot of people worry about cortisol and stress, and not that it's not something to worry about, but there are much bigger players I think you need to consider first, right? I think that, you know, the biggest question with Adderall or Vyvanse or really any stimulant is, does it get in the way of you doing the more important things like getting your food in and getting your sleep, right? If these things keep you up or keep you from sleeping, or they make getting your food in really hard so you're not able to accomplish that task, then absolutely they're going to get in the way of your muscle building potential, right? In terms of cortisol and stress, I haven't really looked into the effect on cortisol. It may be there. You know, I've seen blood work where cortisol seems fairly normal, right? But we're looking at a snapshot in time. In terms of stress, I mean, in some ways, Adderall and Vyvanse may help stress, right? You're able to get more done, feel accomplished, relax a little more. For chronic users, a lot of times cortisol and stress response for many stimulants is less of a concern. If anything, for a chronic user, cold turkeying these things might cause a great stress response, right? So yeah, those are my biggest considerations. You know, is it getting in the way of those other bigger, more important things? You know, they probably can improve your motivation to go train and potentially the quality of your efforts in the gym. So it's not all bad. I think a lot of people, like, they think about these things and they start to get anxiety and they're like, oh my God, is this getting in the way of my muscle building potential? And that's probably more harmful than the actual the Adderall when it comes to stress response.
So when I think about like acute use of these things, I almost wonder like how much like a high stress lifestyle occurs in individuals who are using this stuff short term, like deadlines in school that are stressing you out, a ton of work that needs to get done at your job. So then you start using Adderall or Vyvanse to kind of speed up your work rate and get that stuff done. And it's like, oh man, I'm so stressed out. But the stress isn't really being driven by the Adderall or the Vyvanse. It's being driven by the lifestyle factors, which the Adderall is then treating. You may see a decrease in muscle growth, but you need to rewind all the way back to step one. What was the actual source of the stress? And it was deadlines at work or something. That's what maybe contributed to lack of sleep, poor nutrition, causing the decreased muscle growth, not the Adderall or the Vyvanse themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Paul brought up some really good points, because that would be my primary concern, is it keeping you from eating? Because it does have a bit of an appetite suppressant effect on some people. Yeah. And then also, I mean, it's a stimulant. So if you can't sleep and you're basically affecting all the things that will assist in recovery, which is, you know, probably one of the greatest things, or probably the one variable that's the most important, you know, for actually you know, making any progress at all. So I think that would be my two primary concerns outside of, you know, stress or cortisol levels. And then cortisol at the end of the day I'm not going to say it's misunderstood, but it's definitely not completely understood. Like, you know, you wake up and there's a cortisol response, like your brain, your body's like, oh shit, it's another day. Like that's, so nobody really knows why that is. So there's all these things. Yeah. Like every morning I wake up like, oh, but, so I think that's probably low on the things that should be of concern when you look at Adderall and all that stuff. Even, I mean, I was just looking at a study on that exact same thing, and like, sure, stress levels and cortisol levels are increased along with blood pressure, but is it going to affect, especially when it comes to gaining muscle? Probably not. But I guess also you have to look into other factors of your life. So stress is cumulative. So if you're a person that's just already stressed out already and you're a high stressed individual, taking Adderall may not be the best thing to, you know, it's not going to help, but I think that's going to be case specific. It's going to be dependent on the individual a bit.
That's a really good point.
I think too, when asked this question, there's the whole variable of if somebody's enhanced or not. So it's kind of like the metformin argument that it decreases IGF-1 levels, but we'll never see a study that shows metformin use in somebody who's enhanced at an ungodly amount of IGF circulating. Like, is metformin actually doing that? Which I kind of can see the same thing here, like on a muscle growth aspect. Like, what negative effects this has with cortisol, is it enough to, you know, chump the benefits that enhancements bring in terms of muscle growth?
That's a really interesting thing that a lot of people worry about. Like, I've had people ask, like, hey, is taking Benadryl bad for my gains? For which I have no idea if it is or not. But, you know, to them, I say, like, well, they'll use it for sleep or whatever. I'm like, well, what's worse? Not taking the Benadryl and getting bad sleep, or is taking the Benadryl and getting a full 8+ hours of sleep going to be better for your gains, right? You have to sort of weigh these things out. taking something that may have a negative impact on muscle growth is maybe not what we on the surface want. But if we have all these other pillars in place that are helping us grow muscle, it could just be so negligible that it doesn't even matter.
Yeah, that's kind of what my thought process is on a lot of this stuff.
I think
Then you have to think, like,
a tangential question might be looking at other pharmaceuticals like Ambien, Lunestra.
Dude, I don't even know what that word means.
Tangential? Tangential? Like semi-related, but off to the side a little bit?
Did you read like word of the day today or something?
I
So now
did,
you're
but
using
it
big
wasn't
words, because I don't
tangential.
know
Do you
what
want to
they
know what
mean.
the word of the day was? I'm going to give it to you anyway. Where are you? Where are you? It's in my like spam.
Dude, I'm a science major, not an English major.
Yeah. So now you're
Dom,
using
you
big
know I got
words.
the
Because I don't know
words.
what they mean, I'm going to take that as disrespect.
What did you just call me? You dirty tangential. To look at drugs like Lunestra or Ambien that are basically like sedatives to put you to sleep that decrease the quality of your total sleep. Like they put you to sleep, but they reduce the quality of your sleep. Are those drugs going to have a bigger effect on muscle growth as a reduction of sleep quality?
I can almost guarantee that like getting 8 hours of sleep, 8 plus whatever your requirements are, is going to be better for your gains than getting like 3 or 4 hours of shitty sleep.
Comparably like better sleep, because there was always that
better,
argument around
quality.
There was always that argument around of like around marijuana, like how it like had that sedative effect.
I was just thinking that
notorious reefer chiefer Jason Holt was very worried when all of that came out. Just kidding.
Doesn't smoking marijuana before bed not allow you to enter REM?
I can't remember what it is.
And that's the same thing with like Lunestra and Ambien, that they have that sedative effect. And if you're sedating yourself,
Clark, Mr. Marijuana himself, loves getting high. Like, loves it.
It's true.
But he does not get high before bed.
That's interesting.
He just eats like a bunch of raw meat.
Him and Liver King should hang out.
I worried about that in the past, right? Because I mentioned on, I think it was maybe the last podcast, that I had like awful sleep habits from when I was getting my master's teaching in my first year starting coaching. And it took me like almost a full 3 years to correct those bad habits. And that first year or 9 months, I was probably averaging like 3 hours a night, maybe 5 on a really good night. So I've had plenty of phases where I've just had plenty of phases where I've used a lot of different things for sleep, from prescription things to recreational things to over-the-counter things. And in every circumstance, my gym performance and my gym outcomes were better, improving my sleep over continuing to sleep like 5 or less hours a night. Yeah.
Jay, did you have something to add? I feel like I cut you off.
I was going to say, so I also have to ask, is Delete 5794, is he asking this because he's prescribed Adderall? Because the effects of Adderall to someone that's prescribed to it are going to be somewhat different for someone that is not prescribed to it, just because there's going to be a chemical imbalance. So if you think about it like that, that's another one of those things, like you probably never get that past an ethics point. Like, let's give some Adderall to someone who is not prescribed it, and then let's see how this affects cortisol. Like, that probably will never happen. Well, maybe, I don't know. But
Weak.
But I don't know, that is that a variable to kind of take into consideration? Are you do you need this? Or
if they actually have ADHD, you're saying?
Yeah. Because I wonder if it's different.
Yeah, would it almost be comparable to like using testosterone for someone who has like hypogonadism versus someone who's like enhancing with testosterone? Of like, the Adderall puts the ADHD person into like normal physiological ranges, where the same thing with the test does for someone who needs TRT, or someone who doesn't need it, hypothetically pushing them out of the range. It's a good question.
That's a good
That's a
question.
good question.
It's a good thought.
Because I mean, I met someone once who it was so peculiar to me because it was I didn't even know that it was really a thing. But without Adderall or Vyvanse, they were all over the place mentally but very like talkative and energetic. And then when they took ADHD medicine, it like leveled them out, and I was like, holy shit, this is like the opposite of amphetamine to you, like.
Yeah, you'll meet those
But
people.
I think that's what it does to those that have that hyperactivity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it's designed
it
for,
levels them out. Because you'll meet those people that are like, oh, I have like, I have 600 or 700 milligrams of caffeine a day, and it does absolutely nothing for me. And I'm like, what?
Why are
But
you
for
talking
me, if I
about
had
me?
that much,
I'm right here.
I was specifically talking about Ryan. But,
Say my name.
But I mean, if I have 500 milligrams of caffeine, it's things are not good. So I think it just depends on the individual. But that's the first thing that kind of stuck out is, does this person not necessarily need it, but are they prescribed that due to some level of chemical imbalance? And I wonder if that chemical imbalance immediately, is there an effect to stress and cortisol level that require you to take Adderall to begin with? So are you starting off with either higher or lower levels of cortisol? And
Hear me out.
Go ahead.
Probably the treatment there is cortisol supplementation.
Hear me out. Well, we're talking about caffeine. Jay, what happens if you have 900 milligrams of caffeine? Bad things, right? Bad things happen to you. It's unpleasant.
Mostly poop.
But there's plenty of research on caffeine intake where they gave people 9 to 12 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. They've even concluded that the best dose for strength performance, absolute strength output, is 6 to 9 milligrams per kilogram, which means that the upper end of that range is 900 milligrams for a 220-pound male. Why can we give 900 milligrams, close to 1,000 milligrams of caffeine to people, but we can't give people 10 milligrams of Adderall? Why is one okay with an IRB and the other one isn't? Like, why do these things exist?
It's a good question.
Yeah, an even bigger question is why such a negative stigma with it outside of research, right?
I read a meme yesterday that said 2 consenting adults should be allowed to duel each other to the death. And I think that the IRBs should take a similar attitude, that if you've got individuals who are consenting to be part of these studies, no matter what is inside of the study, then you go forward with it, because these are adults. They speak for themselves. And if they're consenting to the research protocol, then let's run it. Why are we sitting around twiddling our thumbs? Paul, you muted yourself. I don't know if he's doing something. Oh, he's having a phone call. All right. At delete5794, we took your question. We made it our own. And we're sorry for that. But hopefully you also got an answer that you wanted. Our next question comes from at Zollant187. Zollant is asking about Fatgripz. So do Fatgripz really work? And when would be the best time to use them? So I think we have to define what really works would be in the context of
there are better ways to fuck up your training.
Yeah, I was gonna say if your goal is to navigate how to wrap your meaty paws around a thick pipe, then grab yourself a pair of Fatgripz, and your homies, your thick lad homies, will love you forever. But if you're trying to implement them in training, I think my friends here might have some input for you there. Paul, why are they going to fuck up your training?
Hey, man, I mean, it depends on what you use it for, but I see a lot of people using them for things where grip now becomes the limiting factor. And so you don't want your grip to fatigue before your lats when you're doing pulling movements, or your biceps when you're curling and things like that, or your forearms to fatigue if you're doing deadlifts or stiff leg deadlifts or something. They're probably a really good tool for improving like grip strength, maybe, or a way to do that. You just want to use them in a way that it doesn't fuck up the rest of your training. And for hypertrophy purposes, it always is peculiar to me when people bring up wanting to improve their grip strength, because I mean, that really is just a non-concern. And I think that even without there are some people that will have be genetically sort of predisposed to having shitty forearms, but a lot of people will get pretty decent forearm development just from their training, carrying weights around, moving dumbbells, loading, unloading plates, and then holding on to things. And I think even with straps, your forearms are not going to just get no stimulus ever. I have, it could be a genetic thing. My forearms are fairly large, some kind of awkwardly large to where they even make my biceps look a bit small, like a front double. And I have not done any forearm work since like my first few months training, where I saw somebody doing it and I was like, oh, that looks like something I should do.
Fatgripz are to grip strength what rack pulls are to pulling strength. They're very like joint angle specific strengthening, because like the Fatgripz are a standardized width, and they are, I don't know how they standardized it, a certain percentage, we'll say 200% larger than your normal barbell. So you will get a lot better at gripping things that are 200% larger than the average barbell, but the strength that you develop is going to be joint angle specific, and you are very good at gripping those things. But anything larger, you will lose that grip strength advantage, and anything marginally smaller than that, you will also not have had that specific grip stimulus. So if you are someone who's like a strongman competitor, and where grip strength is a huge part of it, like you're going to get your grip strength training from picking up the odd implements. If you're a bodybuilder, grip strength isn't something that you should worry about, because no one has ever won a bodybuilding show by shaking the judge's hand the hardest. After the show is over and the judge like comes up and is like, oh, great job in the overall. And it's like, oh, great job, Paul. Like you won the heavyweight division. And Paul just like crushes this man's hand because he's been using his Fatgripz. The judge isn't going to be like, oh my God, give me that overall trophy back. This guy is an absolute behemoth of grip strength. Like hand it over to Paul instead. Like that's never, ever going to happen. And if it takes away from your hypertrophy training, you might be just directly shooting yourself in the foot. That's my diatribe.
I can't even imagine dedicating the time and volume in the gym to that. Like I have other things to train. Like I don't have time for that, dude. And I'll never, dude, big forearms. It's like a party novelty. No one gives a fuck on stage or like in the grand scheme of your physique. Like no one.
Also, imagine you're like a complete beginner at the gym and you look over and some dude is like pulling Fatgripz out of his bag. And you're like, oh my God, that guy brought a vibrator to the gym. Like, what? This is a whole different game that we're talking about now. And you're like, oh my God, he's wrapping it around the bar. What the hell's going on? And then you're over there with your Fatgripz like, hell yeah, big brain. I'm getting yoked.
I'll play devil's advocate though. Yeah, I use CAS grips for a lot of stuff.
That's different. That's totally different though.
It's not the same.
Why is that different?
The CAS grips are designed. They're more somewhat cone shaped, so they're biomechanically. I remember looking into it because the first time I saw them, I was like, "Why is that better? This is fucking stupid." And then I looked into it. They're designed to biomechanically just fit better in your hand, so that holding things is actually easier than harder.
Yeah, that's what I got out of them. And I only use them for things that would fatigue like in my elbow first. So when I switched over to using them, like a tricep push down or like a curl or like anything like pushing wise with them. Yeah. I don't pull with them though, but anything pushing wise with them, that's
way
a lot better.
Push your grip strength is never going to be an issue in pushing exercises. Right. Like when you push, you're not going to be limited by your grip strength.
And even the guy who sort of designed them, when he pulls in them, he wears straps, or he made a smaller version even than the original, so that he could use what are those called? Versagrips.
Yeah.
I think about it. So there's a correlation between grip strength and overall strength, right? But you have to, if grip strength is the issue, just do some grip specific work. If that's your primary concern, there's no need to start blending things together. Like I'm going to do some curls for my biceps and I would like to work on my grip strength at the same time. Maybe you're just crunched for time and you just those are your two aims, I guess that makes a little
So
bit of
you
sense.
wanted two suboptimal stimuluses at the same time.
Yeah.
It's like
if that's your jam.
It's like the deadlift barbell row superset where someone does like one barbell row rep and then one deadlift. It's like I would like to get the least out of both at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, I guess then it makes sense. So maybe that would be the best time to use them if you would like to not be anywhere close to optimal at most things. But it seems like you would need some direct grip work. And like Ryan said, it's very specific to just holding on to Fatgripz, and that's it.
And like I've coached quite a few powerlifters now, and never have I had to have them do ancillary like grip work.
No,
right? It's just,
yeah.
hey, we're going to deadlift loads that we can load, and we're going to overload over time, or loads that we can lift and we're going to overload over time. And their grip strength just kind of comes up with everything else, And even I've had one who at some point in prep was like, hey, I feel like my grip does a little better if I do some pull-ups without straps. Can I do that? And I was like, sure, fuck it. Like
it's not even an absolute grip strength issue. It's more of a grip endurance issue where a deadlift lasts for longer than they expected. And then their ability to hold on to the load for the 5-6 seconds that the deadlift takes becomes the limiting factor. It's not the absolute grip strength that's the problem. And like Paul said, there's very easy ways to fix that. Deadlift or pull-ups are a good one. Or even if you just instruct the athlete to hold the deadlift at the top for an additional 2 or 3 seconds to build more of that grip endurance. But saying that you missed a deadlift because of grip strength is one of those misnomers that kind of bothers me in powerlifting. Like your hands were strong enough to grip it and get it off the floor. You just like had one of those shaking attacks when you were locking out. So if you were better at locking the weight out faster, you wouldn't have that issue with your grip. One of the craziest grip fails that I saw was when we were down at Hybrid when Jamal missed his last deadlift and it looked like someone from the crowd like shot him. Because like his one hand just gives out. When you're pulling on 1,000 pounds and one hand gives out, you're just like, oh, and you're just gone.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
Jay, I interrupted you.
I don't know what I was going to say there. It's gone. It's completely gone. But whenever I think about grip strength, okay, that's what it was. So I've seen, like Bryce Lewis was the first person that I saw that do this. He basically was trying to work up to a monster squat because most of his squats are monster. But what it was is he would load up far more weight than he actually could squat, and he would just walk out with it and then just stand there. And that's how he kind of got, sort of I assume that you create some sort of like neural pathway to just like hold that weight and just stand there. So I think you could probably do something, even if you're concerned about grip strength, you could probably just load up a bar in a deadlift in your strongest position, which is probably going to be like pretty high, like close up to your hip, and then just kind of stand there and just hold it. And that's probably going to be a bit more effective than paying whatever. I don't even know how much, what a Fatgripz, what's the retail cost on a Fatgrip?
I think
$50-$60, I assume, is like the
I think they're
going rate
usually
for everything these days.
$69, and then they're on sale for $4.20. I think
69 sounds about right. But that
sounds about right.
That might be a bit more
$30.
$30 for now. But never mind. But yeah, I think that'd probably be a much more effective way to go about increasing grip strength. Even that, or even I remember getting like those little, as a kid, my dad always had those things that were like plastic. It was basically just like a spring, like a handle on. You would just like squeeze it.
Yep.
Do you guys remember those?
Yeah. I don't know what those are called.
That probably. I don't know. I think
I just never had the problem because, I got a power lifter in meet prep, right? For example, hypothetical example, we're 20 weeks out. Okay. I thought my thing closed out.
Nope.
And we just start 20 weeks out lifting and holding what you can in the deadlift. And we just progressively add load, and we only lift things that we know you can lift. And by the time you get to your meet, like you're as strong as you need to be. Like,
imagine specificity and overload working.
Yeah.
Jay, I like your point of like loading up more and doing like a walkout. Like the Chinese weightlifting team is notorious for this. They'll do what they call like jerk dips, where they'll like load like 600 plus pounds in a front rack position, and they'll just walk it out and then just like dip like they would in a jerk, just to kind of overload that one pattern, so that if they're comfortable dipping in a jerk with 300 kilos, then they should be good to go when they've got 200, 205, 210 on there.
I totally get that, because I mean, I'm sure this has happened to all of us, right? Like we put some weight on the bar, and maybe it's a new weight or something we haven't hit in a long time, and you pick it up off your back and you're like, wow, this feels like shit. It's not what you want to feel in competition. Like you want to unrack something and be like, oh, this is going to be good. I got this, you know?
I think that's such a funny feeling that everyone knows when you like walk out of squat and you're like, I'm going to miss this. I'm for sure going to miss this. I'm going to bend my legs awful. And I'm going to try and stand it up, but I'm going to miss this.
Like everything shaking.
Story. We were training on Saturday. It was Clark's first day back in the gym after getting his lung out. And one of our friends is a pretty strong power lifter.
Yeah, pretty strong is how I would describe him, for sure. Just pretty strong.
He was doing squat bench deads that day, and he got to his top set of squats. I think it was like 685 for a triple.
That's pretty strong of him.
Yeah, that's pretty strong.
So he tells me, "Can you get on one side?" And then he tells Sal, "Can you get on another side?" Nah. Sal is deaf in both ears.
Did not know
that. Yeah, he has hearing aids, and even with his fucking hearing aids, he can't hear anything. So we're always having to scream at him, and he can't whisper either. So, but so we're spotting him like right under the load, right under the plates, and we're squatting down, coming up, squatting down, coming up. The second rep, he goes down, and I looked in the mirror, and I was like, "This is not coming back up." So he goes for his third, and he can't get up. So he yells, "Spot!" Or grab, whatever the fuck he said. I grab it, and I'm hugging it, and I'm trying to lift it, and Sal's just standing there because he didn't hear anything.
Just looking at his phone.
Oh my God, it was hilarious. But yeah, no, it was just funny.
That's awesome.
All right, Zollant, I hope we answered your question. If you already spent money on Fatgripz, we hope that you did it on a credit card. Always remember that you can dispute the charge.
Question, because I've actually never tried this. I have seen some people use it on pressing movements. I think they claim it feels better on their wrist or something, or feels more comfortable or ergonomic. I have no idea. It seems dumb to me, but I don't know.
It probably feels better on their elbows.
Maybe. I don't know.
Because they can't grip as hard. So they're probably not like flexing all these extensors as hard.
Yeah, I remember as we were climbers for a while, and that was the big thing with climbing is if you over grip things, you would fry your forearms far before you were done. So that is very true. Like you don't really want to squeeze things as hard as you possibly can because your extensors will probably fry.
Well, there's an argument for in terms of pressing to actually squeeze the bar as hard as you can.
Isn't there like a direct link between like force output and how hard you're gripping on the bar?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've heard that as well.
There is.
So maybe from an endurance standpoint, it makes sense not to grip as hard as you possibly can.
But what about like so there's what's the grip where you basically like the bars in the middle of your hand are closer towards the fatter pad of your hand, but you're almost just like using your fingertips.
I know, like bulldog grip is something like this.
Yeah,
bulldog bar grip is coming.
Yeah,
or something like that.
But I guess you're pushing on the bar with your fingertips pretty hard. So I wonder if it's the same amount of force.
This is quite the conversation about grip. I never thought we would talk this long and this hard
grip
about
on a bar,
gripping things.
We're getting very deep.
All right. Our last question for the day comes from Rodell himself, Rodell Gonzalez at the real rdg.fit. Roddy asks, what do you guys do when a client hits a plateau on weight loss? Is it an issue of refeeds, diet breaks? What if you notice that those things aren't working? So let's say you're taking someone down in a diet and their weight just isn't moving anymore, even though you've continued to push the calories in down and the calories out up, or you've kept the calories out the same, stable. First thing I do is I go with the most effective tool in health, fitness, fat loss, weight loss, whatever you want to call it. And that's shame. You start with shame. You're fucking this up and you are making me bad. You're making me look bad by doing it. So if you start with shame, you can really only tone it down from there. Coming in with the shame lets them know that you're not playing around. What do you guys like to use?
That's not, I mean, I know that was totally, well, it was serious.
Oh, are you going to agree with me? Don't agree with me. Please don't agree with me.
Answer. No, I mean, I think one of the first things that you should do as a coach is make sure that they're not fucking something up. Right.
Okay.
And as annoying as it may be, I mean, whether that's having a conversation about simple mistakes that a lot of people make, or checking their food log for them, or just giving them a meal plan to try and make it as idiot proof as possible. Because that's happened to me before, where I'm just like, man, this person is not losing weight. Like, let's just try this meal plan. Boom. All of a sudden it works. You have no problem losing fat. Something was going wrong. Something you were doing. It was user error. But I don't want to steal this too much. I'll let somebody else talk. I feel like
because we like our definitions around here. We need to define things before we can have a conversation about them, right? So how do you guys define a plateau? How long is the duration there? Weight has been stuck for blank days / weeks.
I'd say at least 3 weeks.
Okay.
I think honestly,
you're not in a fucking plateau if you don't lose weight over a week.
Yeah. I think that's a really good frame of time, because it's just a lot of times within our job, you don't always have 3 weeks to wait. So you might kind of call something a plateau a little prematurely. But yeah, I would agree with Dom. I would not call anything less than about 3 weeks a true plateau, or you just don't know.
And I think if it's for a lifestyle client, even though
you have all the time.
Yeah, you have all the time in the world. And on top of that, like, even though weight loss isn't happening, with a lifestyle client, weight loss isn't the only goal. There are a lot of other metrics that you can refocus a client on outside of the scale, which may actually have better long-term consequences or long-term effects than just focusing on that scale. Are we improving your health markers? Are we getting you into better habits? Are we reinforcing your you looking at performance metrics in the gym? Are you getting stronger? Do you feel like you have better energy throughout the day? Sleep. I just had this conversation with a client today. She was very stuck on the scale, and I just asked her a series of questions. Is your sleep getting better? Do you feel better in the gym? And it was just like, yes, 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 yes. And it was like, then how could we be plateaued if our goal is to improve your health? If our goal is to improve your health and we're checking 9 out of 10 boxes, then we're getting there. I talked to somebody
about this the other day too. And I said, just because you're not losing weight doesn't mean you're not losing fat.
Yep.
No,
there's so many things that go into, like your weight, your morning weight.
Yeah.
Like maybe we were around Thanksgiving, maybe you were sleeping less because you had events, or you had, there's so many different things. So I had to remind her that, just because you're not losing weight doesn't mean you're not losing fat. And then she was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because even when I look at my pictures, we can see a difference in them. And then she went from being extremely constipated to not anymore. So there's so many different things that I was like, these are all variables that play into your weight every day.
Dude, I'm gonna completely shut up after this one, Paul. I promise. I'll shut up after this.
Motherfucker.
I know, right? I think that there is an article that everyone who has lifestyle weight loss as their goal, or lifestyle fat loss as their goal, needs to read, and it's called "Of Whooshes and Squishy Fat" by Lyle McDonald. I can't tell you how many times I have sent this exact article to individuals, but it explains the fat loss whoosh and why you might see a plateaued scale weight for weeks at a time, and then all of a sudden it just like falls off a cliff. So we can actually throw that article in the show notes below so that everyone can read it, because it's one of those ones that I reference back to almost weekly.
Yeah. So no, that is a really good article, and something that I need to start recommending to a lot of clients too. But I thought you guys were going in a different direction. You guys went in the health direction, but That's why I always have people collect circumference measurements now. And I've grown to love those so much, man, because they can tell such a different story than the fucking scale. And yeah, I mean, sometimes you'll see people's weight plateau, but it's like your waist circumference is smaller, or maybe limbs measure slightly bigger or are maintaining their size, while waist is getting smaller. And then you ask some follow-up questions. You're like, well, do you feel like you look different? Like, do your fit clothes different? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, cool. So we didn't like mismeasure. And it's like, things are going well. I'm not going to adjust your food yet. Right.
Yeah. I think you guys have all made pretty good points. Like really good points. Cause that's the big thing's going to be whether or not it's a lifestyle client or if it's a physique competitor. I usually almost try to bake in a potential quote unquote plateau inside of a contest prep and just go, hey, let's give ourselves another month so we can be ready early, because there's a good chance that it's going to happen. Often fat loss isn't necessarily linear for a lot of people. So try to bake that stuff in. But yeah, with lifestyle clientele, try to get them off of that scale as being their primary indicator of progress. So ask them all those questions. Like Ryan said, do you feel good? What does your day look like? Are you sleeping better? Even things like sex drive, stuff like that, or all the things. I mean, I'm not trying to go too deep into that conversation, but those are the things you can kind of bring up to see if they're actually making progress, and then kind of get them away from using the scale as their only indicator of progress. And then also like Paul was saying, first, assess what's going on. Often a plateau isn't really a plateau. It's that they've stepped outside of the plan at some point in time. They've done something that's going to be weird. I've tried a ton of that stuff, refeeds, diet breaks, and sometimes it's the person is just not tracking the way that they should, or they're like, oh, that's right. Every weekend I've been going bowling. I've been eating 2 hot dogs, but I've been tracking it. And you're like, what? Like, wait a minute. Like, what kind of hot dogs? Well, I don't know. I just pick hot dogs from MyFitnessPal. And you're like, oh, so that's the thing. And people don't realize how small of an increase in caloric intake could possibly take them out of being in a caloric deficit. So if you kind of explain to them like, hey, it might not seem like it's a big deal, but it very well might be a big deal if that's the thing.
Yeah.
But or they underestimate the caloric value of what they're eating. You know what I mean? Because it's true. Like if using a 50 calorie condiment one day takes you out of a deficit, then you're not in much of a deficit to begin with. And like, you should be able to do that and still continue to lose weight, but people, like you said, they pick this hot dog that's 180 calories and they think that's what they're eating. But in actuality, they're eating like a 400 calorie hot dog, and they're having 2 of them, on that Friday night.
Yeah. Like I always tell people, your deficit isn't a daily thing. It's a weekly thing. Because like people will really eat off plan and they think, well, I was so perfect. Why didn't I lose any weight? And I'm like, well, you ate enough to take you out of a deficit this week. Like you probably ate enough to potentially put some fat back on. Because I hate the whole 500 calorie thing to lose a pound. I know it's really standard. Like it's just, what you kind of learn on the basis of, the base of everything. But to say 3,500 calories is what it takes to add a pound of fat back, that's such like a hard quantitative number that I think people put too much like trust in. It's because they think if they didn't eat 3,500 calories over their maintenance, they didn't gain any fat back.
Yeah, I think Lyle has an article about that, sort of not necessarily debunking that, but just saying like, yeah, it is good because people like to hear numbers, especially when you're considered sort of a specialist in your field. They like to hear you sound like there's some very concrete information that you can give them that will allow them to make progress. So 3,500 calories or 500 calories a day, that sounds really good on its face. But, we're an adaptive species. There's a lot of things going on that are going to definitely interfere with that potential of 500 calories exactly being the thing that's going to allow you to either make progress or not making progress.
So I'm going to push back there because I think the 3,500 number, I think that is a solid number. And it's like, that's the number that you want to shoot for. Where I think people get lost, or where I think people kind of get a little bit jaded, is in like how do we get to that 3,500 number, and how much goes into that daily deficit, where it's like what Paul said, like a little bit of extra like sauce here or there might be, 50, 100 calories. Your step count is, 1,500 to 2,000 less on a couple days of the week. And you've really kind of slowly but surely, with like tiny little steps in your day, eaten away at that deficit. And what on paper was 3,500 calories ends up being, 1,500 to 2,000. So you think that you are in that deficit, but in reality, it's significantly less. And I think a conversation that I often have with my lifestyle clients who aren't on a concrete timeline is like, that's fine. I was like, that's not a big deal. Like, remember that your goal was to lose weight, to lose body fat. Like 0.5 pounds in a week of body fat is still a success. It's still closer to our goal number, to your goal number that you were at. Like, you're going to have weeks where you absolutely knock it out of the park and you lose 1.2, 1.5. And then you're going to have weeks where, shit comes up at work and it's someone's birthday and, you get stuck with a work deadline. Your steps aren't great that week. Your training isn't awesome. 0.5 is not a step back. It's still a step forward. It's just a smaller step forward than you had originally planned. But you cannot go broke making a profit. And that's still a profit at the end of the day.
I think one thing that the 3,500 rule kind of plays a weird part for me is you don't, a lot of people don't take into consideration that if you reduce food, you're reducing other parts of your energy expenditure outside of direct food. Like your thermal effect of food goes down because you're not eating as much food. Your NEAT possibly could go down because you're not having as much calories. So your 3,500 calorie deficit you think you're eating on the surface is actually probably closer to like 2,000 because of that energy demand shift. I think that's where I think, better coaches, more knowledgeable people can piece that together and really show a client why. Yeah, you might think you're eating at a 500 calorie deficit a day, but this is why you're not losing at that rate.
I mean, we know the metabolic adaptation happens, and part of that is from the weight loss. And you can even maintain your step count, and still you don't burn as many calories throughout a day. I mean, because step count is only one part of the amount of moving you do throughout a day, right? Like you're doing a lot of other things. So,
and if you're losing weight.
Well, if you're losing weight, your steps don't burn as many calories.
Yeah,
Boom.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything.
So I think
that's why Steve Hall wears a weight vest as he loses weight.
Yeah. And I think
Steve Hall,
so the
very, very gifted bodybuilder. We like Steve, very gifted,
absolutely
ascending towards legend status as we speak.
But here's the thing. One thing I like to take into consideration when I create or I start giving out those hard numbers. And there was a time where I did it all the time, but what will happen is if you start to explain too much about energy balance, what will happen is if somebody says, okay, so I have to eat a net of 3,500 calories less per week, they'll start doing weird stuff like, I'm going to undereat 3 days in a row, and then I'm going to overeat on the weekend. And then they've created their own sort of weird low day, high day situation that's basically uncontrolled by you or them because they're just going to overeat. So it can be sort of a strange line to kind of balance. And, for the coaches out there, you're going to have to look at the personality of the person that you're working with. And if you discern very early on that, their relationship with food is not very good, which is often the case, that's why they reached out to you to begin with. Giving them numbers or even explaining energy balance as a whole might not necessarily allow them to fix that relationship with food because they're going to get right back into a very disordered eating pattern.
It's going to, I could not agree more. It's going to push them down that disordered route. Something, one of the latest episodes of Iron Culture, Ben House and Gabby Fundaro are on Fundaro is her last name. I always pronounce that wrong. Ben was talking about, when I'm coaching clients, like, I don't want you to have my brain. I don't want you to have my knowledge because on a daily basis, it's a burden to have what I have. I want to give you the bare minimum of what it takes for you to reach your goals so that you're not sitting there and stressing about, let's have a low day this day, high day this day. I'll have to do more steps, more cardio to compensate for this, that, and the other, so that you just become this chronically obsessed individual that develops these eating patterns. Like, these disordered eating patterns, why don't I just give you the basics, distill it down to the level that you need to know, and then you can just leave all the advanced stuff to nerds like us.
Yeah.
I thought that was a very interesting take.
I think that really is. It's a refreshing one, kind of a unique one. But yeah, I don't even, the 3,500 calorie thing is something that a lot of people talk about and a lot of people already know. And for myself, though, that's not like a big number. I really use a ton. Like a lot of times I'll do like somebody enters a dieting phase, right? And I remove a certain amount of food and maybe I add a certain amount of activity. And then after I make my changes, I just sort of check. I'm like, hey, how close is this to that 3,500 calorie mark? If it's, it probably isn't a bad thing to be somewhere close to that once you total up all the calories or the entire deficit. But then from there, like that number matters no more, really it's just like, hey, are you losing weight or are you not? If you are, like, cool. If you're not, and we've a sufficient amount of time has gone by for us to think you're at a plateau, or other things like mentioned in this question, like a refeed or a diet break aren't clearing up the picture a little bit, then we just got to remove food. Like, fuck the 3,500 calorie number.
Yeah. Yeah. And then precision is like, it's relative. So 3,500, like, sure, it sounds great because it's a very concrete number, but it's at the end of the day, like Paul said, like just less than what you're doing now. Like, you're not losing weight. So that means we either need to increase activity or you eat less food. That's just where we need to be. So getting caught up in how do we get to 3,500 calories or 500 calories less a day? What if they've always been, I think you guys had mentioned on one of the podcasts when I was gone, like, what if they've always been tracking their food wrong? Like, you have no idea if it's actually 500 calories. Who knows? But at the end of the day, there's probably far too many variables to take into account, where just the one that you can control is just eat a little less food. That's it.
Yeah. And I don't know if you guys have ever, I'm sure you have, where either with yourself or a client, like maybe, I know, like for myself, I can get that good initial push into weight loss and fat loss just by removing like maybe 300 calories. I don't even have to come, a full 500 every day, so yeah, there's that.
Roddy, I hope we answered your question. No plateaus for you, man. You're looking leaner and meaner by the day, and I will see you this weekend, buddy.
Wait, we don't want to, I have some more to add to this question.
Then keep going. I was just speaking directly to Roddy. I wasn't even talking to you, Paul. Maybe you should mind your own business.
Cool. Maybe I should. No, but I do think the refeeds, diet breaks, things like that can be something really useful to test the waters, because I think we've all had those situations where we do give somebody a refeed or we do put them in a diet break and it clears up the picture. They get that swoosh that Squat Dad was talking about, and just drop some water weight, and you can kind of see that realized in the scale weight. So yeah, like for myself, if I find myself in a predicament where it's like, it seems like we've gotten more aggressive than I'd like to, or we've tried to combat these stalls with pulling more food. First, I like to make sure that they're doing things correctly, but then it's like, hey, like maybe we do want to try refeed, or we do want to try diet break, see if that clears up the picture some.
I can dig it. Other gentlemen, anything to add? Or shall we clip it and ship it, as they say on Twitch?
They say that?
Oh, that's the thing?
I think so. Like, I hear like people like doing like nasty plays and like PvP and stuff, and they're like, oh, clip it and ship it. I don't know what it means, but I hear people saying it, so I can repeat it. Sound cool?
Let's use it.
Let's use it then. All right, folks. Thanks for coming by. Thanks for watching. As always, like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Head over to giftedperformance.com. We've got plenty of new apparel for you. We're running our transformation challenge starting the new year. Make sure you grab one of those spots. We are about halfway sold out there, so don't miss your opportunity at a $500 cash prize. 8 weeks of coaching with one of our one-on-one coaching specialists. Change your life and win some cash along the way. We will see you on the next one. In the meantime, in between time, as always, stay gifted. Peace. Paul, We can't
Oh,
finish.
yeah. Bye.